Morning, everyone. This is Mortgage Pros 411. I'm Audrey Boisno with Kevin Casey, and today we are joined by Tracy King, who is the COO of Partners Credit and Verification. Good morning, Tracy.
Good morning, everybody. Nice to be here.
I was thinking about you this morning and so glad that you're on. Some days you just need a break from, the crazy, and you are like having, like a cup of hot chocolate on a stormy day while in
Ooh,
front of the fireplace. That's how you feel to me.
I love that. I agree. Whenever I'm with you, it's always fun and comfortable and energetic, or also just come as you are. And when you have a friend like that, that means everything. So I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm really glad. All
Well,
right.
plus we just got to hang out with each other, so that was really cool also.
That was
So
cool too. Yeah, that was the hight for sure. We
Yeah.
need more of that.
At the cowboy party, whatever
Yeah.
that was. So, geez. Okay, so couple things. We should have some reports out this week, but we probably won't. So, just in case, Thursday would have been, and probably won't be, PPI and retail sales. Friday should be starts and permits. But don't hold your breath, kids. The last time I looked this morning, the 10-year yield, though, is down to 4.03. And we won't discuss why because it's complicated. China, rare earth, the market today, oy vey. That's the summary. I
and gold. Don't forget gold.
Okay, and gold. All right, I did want to mention because we are beating this drum pretty hard as November 1st looms and our registrations start, and hopefully you are at least scheduled to do your NMLS training. And I hope to see you in one of the live classes that we are doing, but if you haven't, you should. And also, I logged into NMLS last week, I think, like I've been telling everyone else to do for months. And it was completely different. It looked totally different than it looked in previous years. And
Yep.
because I could not find what I needed. And so I did what I do every time that happens. And I called them, and they are the nicest people. I always tease them that they have to all be medicated because they are so sweet and patient. And I mean, I would never make it in that job, not for one single second, because I'd be out of my mind with the dumb questions that I was asking. Regardless, go in and log into your NMLS. It doesn't look the same. And weirdly, though, this year I didn't have to change my password, which I had had to do every year forever.
Yeah, that's the other one. It's weird.
It is weird. But the other thing too is, remember I kept saying, like, they're telling me I have to get my fingerprints. I feel like I'm doing this all the time now. And I clicked on it. Don't ask because I couldn't possibly go back to it. But they have the list of when you did your fingerprints, et cetera, et cetera. And there was a big gap between the first time, the second time, and the third time. But man, it's been regular the last few years. So I had to go get,
That's because your fingerprints keep changing, Audrey.
I know, I know.
You know,
I know.
you keep
Sorry.
having your nail person file down your fingerprints also. That's probably what's happening there.
That's probably it. Yeah, I know this is a little known fact about me, but I'm a masochist and I love pain. So yeah, I do that when I go to the nail shop. Also, just want to mention that on November 4th, we're going to be in South San Francisco, and camp is putting on their fall, what is it being called? Fall,
Extravaganza, I think they called it.
what?
Extravaganza, I think that's what they
Oh,
called it.
it's called, don't oversell this, okay? Anyway, they're gonna do a vendor fair, a lender fair. There's gonna be a non-QM or private money, I think it's private money panel. We're gonna do our show live from there that day. So it is something, please come. The parking's easy, 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 easy. And apparently the food's amazing. So make sure you sign up for that. All right, moving right along.
You know, it's San Francisco when the giant pole is the parking is easy.
Well, it's actually not in San Francisco. It's a city that's below called South San Francisco. Totally
Oh,
different city.
oh,
If
I didn't know
And
that.
if
it's in a
Kevin would
local
literally,
neighborhood. It's not
yeah.
um
I said South San Francisco. Did you?
yeah, I
You
know,
did.
but
I'm a Chicago girl that doesn't know that those are two
yeah,
separate
South
cities.
Chicago is still part of Chicago, but South
Yeah.
San Francisco is a different city altogether.
Okay, got it.
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. No, don't be sorry. All right. So, just in case you missed it, we're in day 14 of the shutdown, and our Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, has indicated this is going to be probably, he didn't say probably, I'm just going to qualify it and say probably the longest shutdown that we have. They're really digging in, but today was the last day that the air traffic controllers got paid 70% of normal. Thanks to Barry Habib for pointing this out. I wouldn't have known otherwise. So the question is now what? They got 70% of what their normal paycheck is. So what will happen to airports around the country? So if, so I think that until our politicians start hearing from us that we're unhappy with this, it's probably nothing's gonna happen.
So if you were a traffic controller, would you show up to work if you weren't getting paid?
Well, I don't know, Kevin. We're in the mortgage business and we're LOs. We are not on a salary and we show up to
We
work
show up every day.
whether or not we get paid.
So they should just hire a bunch of LOs to do the traffic control because
I'm
we'll
probably
show
the
up whether
first
we
to
get
ask.
paid or not.
Okay, well, I listened to this whole Freakonomics episode about air traffic controls, and what I found out is we're old. We're really old. Like neither of us we would have already been retired. And as a matter of fact, some of our children are too old to start and they're in their 30s. So they have a very strict age requirement that we would not, that yeah, the average person in the mortgage industry wouldn't work in.
Because isn't it still considered like the most stressful job on the planet or something? And that's why is because the blood pressure is going so hard, it could create a heart attack if you're too old like us.
Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, and again, people think that that's so difficult. I mean, everyone in the mortgage space who's getting a loan thinks that their lives are on the line and we're in charge of that. And, so, I know they're all stressful, but they say the air traffic control is crazy stressful.
It's the
You
most.
remember the movie Airplane? Remember that? Boy,
Yeah.
I sure do. Sure did miss. I sure did pick the wrong week to stop drinking.
Oh yeah.
I sure did pick the wrong week to stop doing crack or cocaine or whatever it was.
Put that under the list of movies that could never have been made today. Yeah.
I'll have to go back and watch it. I mean, is it really offensive? I don't even know.
I mean, it depends on what generation you're from,
I was
probably.
offended, so there we are.
You were not offended.
Oh, yeah.
My favorite line from my favorite movie ever could not be said in public right now. So anyway, all right,
Sure.
moving right along as we are outing ourselves. The good news of the day, because we do have two Fed meetings left in this year, October 29th and December 10th, is the BLS has decided that they're going to come back to work long enough to put together September CPI numbers. This is good. And by the way, do you know that October 24th is next freaking Friday?
It's wild.
Astounding. I feel like I'm going to go through the rest of my life going, holy crap, that went fast. Okay. So, the odds of having further price or Fed funds decreases are pretty high, but how will it affect mortgage rates? We don't know. So it's all this other stuff that's going on that is impacting the mortgage rates, I think, more than Fed funds, as we are seeing the 10-year yield at 4.03 today, which I know I said it already, but we're saying again. Also thought it was interesting. I saw on Bloomberg that Goldman Sachs did a study of sorts and figured out that US consumers are paying 55% of the tariffs, and the exporting countries and supply chain, they're absorbing the rest. So the consumer is
That would be
feeling it.
coffee is so expensive right now.
I have a client who's a coffee buyer and she's out of her mind. And also,
I'm glad I don't touch the stuff.
there was the CEO of GoFundMe, Tim, God, I'm gonna screw this up, Cadigan. He said that there are a lot of people on GoFundMe doing GoFundMe pages, and they're asking for things like groceries and basics. It's not funny. It's awful. I mean, it's just, it's not like, oh, somebody has cancer and they need money. It's, oh, I can't put food on the table and I need money. So anyway,
You know what? Maybe we should start asking for just money for a cup of coffee.
that's a great idea. Maybe that could help us pay for our expenses on the show. Okay, so the Fed minutes were released for last week's meeting, or for September 17th meeting. The Fed minutes were released last week for September 17th meeting. Yeah, that was it. Big surprise. The Fed's very divided, but again, there is a lot of feeling that we'll have another couple decreases this year. So, yeah, there's that.
My bet would be a quarter and another quarter.
Yeah, I mean, I don't see a lot of benefit for doing half.
I don't know whether it's split on this. It's pretty blatantly obvious the economy has slowed down.
Yeah, one would hope that's obvious, but you never know. So before we get to Tracy, which Tracy, I swear to God, just stay awake a little longer. I'm almost there.
Oh, please. I'm just listening. That's where I get my info.
Okay. I don't know if you noticed, but there was a lawsuit filed last week in Tennessee, no less. And it was against Optimal Blue, and I wrote 3. It was 30 other lenders. 30
Yeah, I
other.
was glad to see none of
Yes.
he was on there.
Yeah, I'm sure everybody scanned the list to see if their company was on there. Thank God ours is not. However, I think the accusation is a little scary. So I was interested in a few things. Number one, it is what they're accusing people of is algorithmic conspiracy. And it's part of antitrust, or it's going to be part of antitrust. So basically, all these people are conspiring together to fix the rates, the mortgage rates, so that there is no competition. And I thought the list was really interesting. I wrote them all down because that's how I roll, but I won't read all 30, I promise. I thought there were some notable standouts. So let's go with, again, optimal.
Wait, notable standouts as people that were on the list or
Yes.
not on the list?
On the list. On the list. We're going to skip anyone who's not on the list because who needs to draw attention to that? Okay, so Optimal Blue, Black Knight, Constellation Software, Rocket and UWM, Wells Fargo, JP Morgan Chase, Loan Depot, B of A, Fairway, and it goes on and on and on, right? There is a company on here called Beeline Loans. Now, how in the hell they ended up in the mix on this, I will never know, but I would like to know. So if anyone does know, please let us know. But the thing that really popped off the page at me was Rocket and UWM being accused of conspiring together to fix prices. Now, I have never heard of UWM and Rocket cooperating on a single thing ever in the history of mankind. So the idea, and as in fact, and again, this is all what I've heard because I don't use either of them. I have heard that they will have price wars to like beat the crap out of the other one just to get more market share. So the idea of them conspiring together is so preposterous to me that it calls into question for me the whole lawsuit in general. But it does make me think, holy crap, here we go again. And they were saying that there were some very notable similarities between, at first they were saying, oh, here, this is the mortgage businesses, in a NAR lawsuit, which would be a disaster, but it's possible, I suppose. But there was another lawsuit that happened, and it was similar. It was this algorithmic conspiracy, and I can't find my thing on this. Anyway, oh, here it is. There was a lawsuit against RealPage, and this is outlined really well in a Housing Wire article. So they were talking about how it's very similar to this RealPage, and guess what the penalty was on this? They settled, of course, because how are you gonna
$4.50. A little bit off.
$140 million split between 26 defendants.
By how many million?
146.
$141 million divided between 26 defendants. I mean, it is scary the way our court system is set up. I just want to make sure that everyone is really thinking through what you're doing, how you're doing it, and the impact that it has, not just on us, but on our borrowers ultimately, et cetera, because this is scary crap. It is, again,
They're like 5 million a person. It's not a big deal.
Kevin, it's the overriding impact on the market and the fact that all you have to do is come up with some bullshit, accusation against someone. You don't even have to prove it. They're just going to try and make you go away. And for that to be cheaper, it's just so egregious in my mind. So there's that. Any comments?
Stay tuned.
No, but I'm going to look into, maybe I should get one of those lawsuits going.
Oh my God, I'm going to beat you.
Take your pick.
The 3 of us, we could put it in, and then instead of splitting with 26 people, we're splitting with just the 3 of us.
Is it taxable? Is it taxable?
You know what? When we're talking 140 million,
Yeah,
basically,
141 million, who cares?
a person about just shy of. I'm okay paying the tax on that.
I know, but that's always when someone wants to split or they talk about after taxes for the lotto wins. Like, what would I get after taxes? It's like, it's free money. Who cares?
Who cares?
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so also National Retail Federation came out with their September numbers. We're now going for National Retail Federation numbers instead of any numbers generated by the federal government, since that's not happening. Anyway, so there was a decline in most categories for credit card and debit card spending in retail sales. So it'll be interesting to see how that trickles down and works out during Christmas, et cetera, or the holidays, whatever you celebrate. So anyway. All right, well, enough of that. Let's talk about credit. Okay. So, what I thought we would do today is start at the very beginning, because there's all this information flying around. There are all sorts of accusations from this place to that place, and I don't care about all that. I just want to talk about what the reality is of the current situation and what is being proposed and the impact. So, first, we have FICO, and then we have the three bureaus, and then we have this Vantage score that was created by the three bureaus. And I've seen Vantage and FICO referred to as models. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So I am very interested to hear from you what the
Mhm.
models are versus what does that mean? And
Okay.
and so let's start with how does the process work now as it stands with FICO in the bureaus?
Okay, so think about it as, so FICO is separate from the bureaus.
Right,
You cannot get a score without the bureaus.
right,
The bureaus are getting data about the borrower from the creditors. So the creditors are getting that information, or excuse me, the bureaus are getting all the information, collecting that, holding that, updating that at their level. So FICO is a separate entity, and they created kind of a tool called the black box. So they have this tool to generate a score for each of the bureaus. And so they offer this black box to the bureaus, and it says, okay, so if you want a score, you can have this black box, and within that are our tools to give you the score. So that is how it's currently operating. So the bureaus have this, they go into this black box, they utilize that information, and out comes a score with the credit report, which is then channeled to the credit reporting agencies, which is kind of confusing. Resellers, that would be a company like mine, like Partners Credit. So
right.
then we provide that report to and furnish it to our lender customers. That is
Okay,
how it currently operated. The way that FICO
hang
is
on, hang on.
proposing the
Hang
change.
on. Wait. I
Okay.
want to stop there for 1 second. I just want to clarify just
Yeah.
this black box thing. So does FICO get paid for it? I think I know the answer. FICO gets paid for every credit report that the credit three bureaus do, correct?
They get paid for the score that they provide. So they in order, so it's kind of like if you all as loan officers ever pulled a pre-close report or an LQI report with no scores. It's substantially less. It's still giving you all of the data. It's the same credit report. It's just missing those scores. So with that, if you do have if you don't have scores on it, then it's substantially less. So essentially, they pay to utilize this tool to generate the score. So they're paying FICO for that score.
So the tool is the black box.
Yeah. Where you're kind of combining the data to generate the score.
Bureau takes that black box and has a slightly different take on how they analyze the data, I would imagine, based on the fact that we get different scores from each individual bureau. How does that work?
So initially, and this is going to come to your second question, I think that's coming down. But so originally, when FICO was doing this and offering it, they had different tools for different bureaus. So each bureau had had a score model that worked for them. So it would, because all the bureaus had slightly different data, however things looked, they created a score model that worked for that specific bureau. So that's where there were different models. Now, to go even further, as a loan officer, I'm sure you are all familiar with that infamous call from the borrower saying, when I pulled my credit, My score was a 720. When you pulled it, it's a 640. Why did you do that to me? And
Right.
it's because it was a different scoring model. So when you get a car, it's a different model. When you are getting a credit card, it's a different model. Your credit is weighed in different ways for different kinds of risk. So there's different models that we know in our industry of like a mortgage inquiry versus, an auto loan or something to that effect.
But then now we have the Vantage score,
Correct. So
which
this is where Vantage came into fruition because there was only one way to generate a score previously. So there was a feeling that there was kind of a monopoly on that, and also that there were different scoring methods for each bureau. So the bureaus came together and they wanted to create a different model that kind of was similar for all bureaus so that it wasn't a different scoring model for each bureau. It was supposed to be more streamlined and unilateral. So that was created by the three bureaus in the early 2000s. And there have been several iterations throughout the years of that, but has not been utilized as much in the mortgage industry because the GSEs hadn't approved them. So now we come to today where we're in the process of seeing that happen and developments on what that looks like.
So when I see them refer to FICO and Vantage in the same sentence and call them models,
Yeah,
they the same?
they're not the same. So, and last year, and I haven't looked, shame on me, at everything happening at MBA next week. But last year, Vantage and FICO were on the same panel at MBA, if anybody went to that, and it was hot. And they have very specific opinions on one another. The one thing that FICO, you have to remember that FICO is also updating their score model as well. So both FICO and Vantage are currently kind of working towards a model that is more utilizing that trended data. So FICO 10T, the T stands for trended data. It's looking at the habits of the borrower, not necessarily like a static snapshot of what that borrower is doing. Think about trended data of saying, all right, Audrey has a zero balance every month. Well, it's not because she never bought anything and was a responsible buyer. She was paying it off every month as well, where previously it might not have taken that in consideration. This way, it shows like, okay, she has spending habits that are really good and should be rewarded for that. And, it's saying that we look at the history and the ebbs and flows of the borrower rather than kind of moments in time. So, with both, they think that Vantage and FICO believe that it's going to reach a new level of borrowers, that it's going to hit some demographics we've never hit before. Now, the differences between the two, and also I just, as a disclaimer, these are not my opinions. This is what we've seen as coming out and what kind of the arguments are between the two. Is that Vantage is really aiming for the, opening up the ability for finding like scores for the unscorable previously. Um, and FICO is arguing that just because you generate a score doesn't mean that a person can get a loan.
Mhm.
And that they're very much, and I was just at the Mortgage Collaborative on a panel where they were discussing that their viewpoint is that if you score someone and give them a score that previously was unscorable, and then they feel like they can go out and get a loan and they're denied a loan, that they are less likely in the future to apply for a loan, that you're discouraging them from that. That is FICO's argument, that just because you're getting more scores out there, it's actually
Right.
kind of deterring that borrower long term. Now, that I have no opinion on that here, and that's just kind of what they're stating. And
So,
Vantage
so
feels like, no, we are going to reach a larger group of people that we are going to be able to provide information on. Again, it's looking at other data, looking at rental that wasn't existing before. Now, the big question mark there is how many renters are reporting to the bureaus. It looks like, or not renters, excuse me, landlords.
Right.
So, from some people say, well, that's only like 10% of
Right.
landlords have a scale, like the scale to be able to report that to the bureaus. How often are they doing it? How accurate is it going to be? So, things like that kind of come up, and it'll be interesting how it plays out and what it actually looks like for the
So
borrower.
my question is do or do not the bureaus charge credit agency, credit giving companies like, let's say Macy's, when they report to the credit bureaus the behavior of their clients, they pay for that. Am I correct?
I honestly, I can't answer that. That is not something that I've looked into. I'm sure there has to be some kind of exchange. And I don't know if it's kind of like Macy's has to run credit, or I don't know how they handle that to speak on it. I don't want to make myself look like an idiot here, but I don't know. But I imagine there is something, and someone out there might have some more details, but I'm not 100% positive on that.
Because I was kind of under the impression that they originally, the idea was, well, if you report the data, then you get to share in the data so that you can use this when you're judging someone's credit. And that's kind of how they got all of the credit card companies and credit stores and stuff start reporting in the beginning.
So
Am I wrong?
I
You're
can
shaking your head there, Audrey.
I can speak to this a little bit. So 325,000 years ago, I worked at a doctor's office. I was 19 or 20, and I ran the front end, even though, just as a little anecdote, I also assisted on vasectomies and circumcisions and
Oh,
well baby checks. And it was Alaska. It was the Wild West, baby.
I love this.
I did so many things. It was insane at that age. But one of the things I did was when somebody came in initially and started talking about how that we could send our patients who hadn't paid to collections, and they put that in my hands. And I didn't know anything. I didn't know what I was doing. All I knew is I mean, I could see what the balances were. And I remember filling out the paperwork. We didn't have to pay anything.
Yeah.
And and you could just do it. You didn't have to provide any supporting documentation. I don't know what ramification that had for anybody at that point, but I thought about it a number of times over the years and actually felt terrible. But there was no charge to us. It was absolutely totally fine, and they were going to report them to something, and it was ridiculous.
Yeah, I just double checked on that while we were talking with computer. And yeah, they do not pay. But it is what they're saying is that basically it encourages repayment to have it on their credit report. So having the data there, that often it costs them money to have it in, but ultimately it encourages borrowers to repay and have it on the credit report than to not. So that's why.
Yeah, interesting. Okay, so if you were to characterize Vantage score as being more closely related to FICO or to the three bureaus, we would say the three bureaus, right?
In relation to how do you mean with that question?
How they operate, like where they are in the credit world. So again,
Well,
FICO is the black
is
box.
Advantage owned by the three bureaus?
It's owned by the three bureaus, but it operates like FICO. So it is a layer, it's their own box. It's their own score generator. Their toolkit is basically how to extrapolate from the data and create a score that they feel represents the borrower and their risk.
That's why they're called a model then also, then I guess.
Yeah.
All
Hmm.
right. I mean, I just,
And the models are designed to predict a late payment. That's what they're designed for originally. Because I know one of the original engineers that worked for FICO, and
so
that's
we had one of the original creators of FICO on our show way back in the beginning when we were in lockdown and we were trying to help people understand, what was going on with the way credit was now being handled during lockdown and with the CARES Act, et cetera. So we had him and another guy on, and they were great. They were really, it was interesting hearing them explain how it all started, and it all happened in Marin, and which is close to us.
Still there, just
Yeah.
across the bridge.
Yep. So anyway, so it is, yeah, but it's confusing. And honestly, until the last couple of years, it's always sort of been this entity, this thing, and nobody really understood the difference between FICO and the three bureaus, and then a company like yours, and how that's not connected
Right.
necessarily. I mean, you all work together, but it's not. Anyway, so I think it's interesting to actually understand exactly the logistics of what's going on.
Yeah. And it's important also to note that the score models that have been used on the mortgage credit reports have not changed for like 20 years. So we have been scoring borrowers the very same way so this is the first time that we've ever shifted that model, even within FICO, that has changed and then to bring on someone new. So yeah, it's pretty momentous.
I also I read that Vantage score, they had just their scoring model was scores between 501 and 990 previously. They just changed to 300 to 850 like the other three bureaus because it was confusing. But
Yeah, I always thought that was crazy. Why did they use a different range?
it was interesting because it also explains why we have borrowers who tell us they have a 950 credit score.
Yeah.
And that actually clears that up. Is they did have a Vantage score of, God knows it probably wasn't 950, but but not every, I should not generalize. Some borrowers add 100 to 200 points to
Right. Yeah.
tell us what it is. So
Right.
that I find the people with the higher scores always tell me it's lower and are lamenting and worried about their credit. And the people who have the lowest scores are the ones who think
They don't care. Yeah, the ones that have over 800 are like obsessed with it. And then the ones that are like under 7, they're like, ah.
Well, no, the lower ones are the one. Well, anyway, you and I must have different experiences. So, okay, the pricing. Let's talk about pricing now. The way pricing works now, and then you can tell us how it's proposed that it will work after these changes that are coming.
Okay, so the way that it works now is, and this is all kind of basic, but to simplify, so, what we heard last year, pricing came out a little bit late last year, and it was from the bureaus were waiting to hear from FICO of what the score pricing would be. And then the bureaus kind of calculate their pricing and then provide it to the credit reporting agencies, resellers such as myself. And then from there, we look at what their increases have been, if there's any changes there, and then we filter it down to our lender customers. So now we're going to go back to the black box. So based on FICO's email or announcement that they sent out a week or two ago, essentially, previously, as we mentioned, the bureaus got that black box from FICO and they housed it and they were able to put the bureau data in there. And then the black box with its tools did everything, generate a score. Then it came to us, we provided to the customer. Now, what FICO is saying is that the bureaus provide the data to us. We house the black box as the credit reporting agency, and we get the tool from FICO to generate the score for the credit report and provide it to the lender. So I think a lot of people were initially confused, like, whoa, wait, we get to do it? It's going direct to us. We're bypassing the bureaus. So it's really important to remember, you can't get a score without the bureaus. You still need the credit report and all that information. They are suggesting to bypass having the bureaus handle putting that score on and saying it to us. So sending it to us, excuse me, and we would house that information. So we're working, and we have really great working relationships with the bureaus and with FICO and Vantage. So we're constantly working on how we do this. It's been interesting because FICO, and this isn't the first time that FICO has put numbers into the universe. So, with a few, if anyone's noticed, a couple big pricing changes within the last few years with credit reports. I think the first huge increase after that, FICO kind of came back swinging a little bit because their argument was, "Oh, hey there, stop blaming us." Because I think initially there was kind of like, well, it was because FICO increased their costs. And they go, we did, but we only did this amount. And they put something out and they said exactly how much they increased it. So then it became very glaring to everyone that either it was the bureaus or it was the resellers that was inflating this number even more. So I think what they're trying to do is say, now don't, the bureaus can't increase on our increase. You know how much we're doing, and this is how much we're saying. Now, the interesting piece of it, is everyone still with me?
Totally.
Is that they're pricing it, but then if everyone, I'm sure as everyone has heard with a lot of credit reporting agencies such as myself, we've talked a lot about closed loan pricing where your credit reporting agency has said, hey, let's look at how to save you money. Let's drive down the cost of the credit that you pull, and then the loans that close will bump up the price, and then you can charge the borrower for that. So FICO in their announcement is saying, okay, we're only going to charge you this amount for the score for each bureau. But then a couple sentences later, it says, and then you'll be charged a closed loan. And on every loan that closes, that'll be an additional fee.
That
So
$9 thing I saw, right?
yeah, I have it up somewhere on one of my cheat sheet screens. So, again, this can, what I'll say to all of you is that very similar to when announcements came out about Vantage and about FICO 10T and about a buy merge and all of these announcements that have been coming out in my world recently, that there's the announcement of what's to come. But that doesn't necessarily mean it's been worked out as to how it is going to come. There are several moving pieces to figure out how that would work. Similar to, for the reseller, when we do closed loan pricing with our lenders, we have tools in place. Most of you use an LOS system. Several of those LOS systems have an automated trigger, or we can associate a closed loan with a product, but we can figure that out internally. How to figure out closed loan pricing with and going kind of back out into our system is a different kind of way of going about things. So I think the other question that came up a lot is who's getting billed? And it's not the lender directly from FICO. It would still be through your reseller. So we would have to figure out that piece as well. So there are so many moving parts that need to be figured out before we move forward. Like I said, we're having our IT team is having ongoing conversations, although I think FICO has entered a silent period where they kind of made the announcement and now it's kind of out there. But similarly, I'm sure many of you have seen responses from the bureaus, and they've been pretty poignant and direct and critical of the announcement. So I think the bureaus feel that potentially it's not what people think it's going to be, and to look into it, and that we're going to protect the borrower and protect you and all of this. So I think it'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. All I know is that my job as the middleman is to make sure we're taking care of everybody and prepared for anything and make sure we're working with everything and everyone so that every option is available. And there are a lot of options on the table right now, between all of these several moving parts.
Wow.
I'm seeing a challenge, big one on how do you charge, I mean, from the lender's point of view, we pull the credit, we pay for that credit pull.
Mhm.
And then how does the system know that we close the loan versus someone else closing the loan? Or
Easy
how
to,
to,
oh, you have to,
Yeah,
yeah, that's,
that's typically done through your LOS system. So that's already, yeah.
and on the back end, MERS reports, are you kidding? Like, everyone knows what everyone else is doing. They know how many loans you're closing, they know who you're it's, all that data is easy. That's all out there. But
yeah, but it's coming after the fact of us closing the loan
matter.
prior to us charging extra for a closed loan.
It doesn't matter. And by the way, that's even this, that's whether or not, so the where my brain goes with this immediately, just based on all these lawsuits and as much as I talk to regulators, is how are they going to feel about one borrower paying the cost that really is from another borrower just spread over the closed loan borrowers?
Well, that's been going on for years though now. I mean, that's an alternative method that I think the industry at first questioned, but is now very much utilizing.
I don't know. How often is that utilized? Chime in, guys,
Well,
because
I think it happens within shops. I mean,
not ever had that happen in any company that I've worked for in 36 years. But I mean, if
well,
you're
no, think about it. So you originate a loan and your office eats that cost of that origination when you pull the credit because you didn't charge up front for that credit report. If your office isn't charging clients for credit reports up front. And so, a lot of brokers that I work with, that's how they do it. They pull the initial credit report. If the loan goes forward, then they charge for it. If it doesn't, they never bill for it, and they pocket it or they eat the loss. But they make it up with all the other loans that they've closed, and the loss makes sense. So the problem was as the credit report started to get more and more expensive, it made it much more difficult to do that. So yeah, I can see that it's kind of been being done all the time, that brokers have been eating those fees and basically recouping it with the closed loan, not directly with charging more on the credit reports.
but we're talking about something totally different. We're talking about what I read is $99 per person being I think they even called it a penalty. I have it written somewhere.
Oh, that's a different, yeah, that's something else.
Oh, that's not on closed loans? I thought it was 99 bucks a person, $198 a couple. And so, and again, we haven't been asking this year, but last year we certainly did. The number of people, brokers who are charging for credit reports up front has gone up big time from what we had heard anecdotally. And also, they weren't having any pushback from borrowers, and it was actually keeping the consumer a little more loyal. So I think that conversation is interesting, but if I've got it wrong, Tracy, tell me what it is. Tell me what that's for.
Well, so in their announcement when they were talking about, I don't think they called it a penalty fee, but there was oh, they did.
They did.
Well, TransUnion called it a penalty fee. So they said, so TransUnion put a statement out and they said they have also introduced a $99 penalty fee on each home buyer. So that's the closed loan pricing. Yes, that FICO called it a funded loan fee of $33 per borrower. So yes, so per borrower per score. So yeah, so that's where that's so again, it's tricky. I'll say that we have been encouraging our customers for years of like, how do I afford all these credit reports? To look into a closed loan fee model for them and have had great success on it. I hear what you're saying, Audrey, of like, how do you do that? How do you penalize the closing borrowers versus the borrowers just kind of like walking through? And there are options to that. And there's discussions around it. It's one, you can always charge every borrower that walks in your door a full fee. Many don't. Um, the second is that typically in a closed loan fee, it includes a lot of things associated with the loan that closed. The reissues, the secondary use fees, the A lot of times people put in the LQI report or the debt activity monitoring or the supplements that you order. Those things are bundled in to kind of say, okay, this is like the kind of the package that you need to close a loan, so that it's like materialized in other ways. So what you're saying is not wrong, but I think it's part of how you spin it. You can spin it as a penalty to a closed loan, or you can look at it in a way that a lot of lenders have is, um, how do we work with these? It's interesting that they're doing it because it's how do we work with these really high fees and not, you know, lose our hat in all of it. And when we are seeing lower closed loan ratios than in previous years, it matters. You know, right now, I'll say there's a spread, typically anywhere from like 15% to maybe 28% closing ratio for my customers. Previously, it went a little bit higher. It depends, and it also goes IMBs or small credit unions typically have a higher closed loan ratio. But um,
Hmm.
you know, if you think about it, for 100 credit reports, you're not getting paid for 70 of them, you know,
Hmm.
on a good day. And if your credit report is, let's just play and throw out a number, on average $100, that's a lot. And
Yeah.
where are you making that up otherwise? And depending on the size of your shop, that's detrimental to your business. So what are your other options? And I think to that point, Audrey, then it starts to be like, oh yeah, no, that's not a penalty. That's a really great way for us to kind of figure out how to recoup those costs.
If I were going to make a list of 1,000 words to not use, or to use as a description for that, penalty would not be on the list. I mean, that
Yeah.
why, who thinks about these things? Like, don't call it a penalty. That's a disaster. There was an article that I found on the FICO website, and this is what they said. The FICO score and other credit risk factors are not generally designed to provide a specific fixed estimate of credit risk. Rather, as discussed in this prior blog post, the relationship between a given credit score and a consumer's likelihood of loan repayment shifts over time and across economic and financial cycles. These
Mhm.
shifts can be driven by factors outside of what is captured in the credit file, such as changes in macroeconomic conditions and lender underwriting practices. That can also play a substantial role in consumers' go forward risk of repayment. Importantly, the severity and impact of these shifts will almost certainly be different from model to model, especially when comparing models with key design differences. So this made me think about a few things. Number one, I would say that the FICO scoring model does a really terrible job of dealing with one-off credit events like one late payment. So I had a client who had a gas card for 50 years. They used it, one time and didn't get a bill, and they had lates on their credit report. It decimated their credit scores. It was not a reflection of their credit profile or their risk, because their ability to repay that $45 charge was not in question. It was a function of they just didn't even think about it and didn't even think. So it doesn't do a great job in some of those situations. And I thought it was interesting when I was looking at the differences between how um, FICO and say Vantage are going to look at things like collection accounts and credit events, and they're different. And so then I started wondering, okay, well, what about the secondary market? And I mean, how do they look at all this? So you have the FICO model that's been tried and true and it's considered, I guess, the gold standard in the industry. That's been used forever. Now we have this new model. Does the secondary market look at Vantage the same way they look at FICO scores and think they're as accurate and that they are as safe? And then what happens there? Any thoughts on that?
A lot. I mean, I know there have been changes. You think about medical. I know the medical debt has been a huge one of like exactly what you're saying. There's a moment in time where something happens and it doesn't describe actually what they, did. Personally, I would not want my gas bill on my credit report because I don't think of it a lot of the times. And I'm like, oh crap, because it hasn't been a priority for me. So if it suddenly was appearing, I probably wouldn't be a very good candidate for some loans. But I think, to what you're saying, everything is looking at a model that looks at the trend of the borrower. Now, I will say that sometimes it depends on how long ago was the late? What the months after? Now, if that late on their gas card appears last month, yeah, I think it should have a heavy hit to it because now you don't know what that means. Is that a start to the trend? Are they going through something that, it's hard because it's not black and white, but a credit report kind of has to be for what we're trying to do.
I hear you, and I am all over the place on this personally, just because I know that over the years, I have seen so many people with one credit card late for whatever reason. And the reasons are almost never because they didn't have the money. It's because it got lost.
I forgot.
It,
Yeah.
it had nothing to do with their credit risk. And so I understand the desire to do a one size fits all, and that's how this data works, and this is how they come up with their algorithms. I understand all that, but whether or not it's right is
Yeah.
a whole different conversation in my mind. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, it's tricky. I just think it's tricky. And
Well, and as a takeaway, take scores out of it, but just to that point of, and loan officers that I know join this call, this is why you always encourage your borrowers to not be scared to pick up the phone and call the creditor immediately when something like that happens, because a lot of times they will remove that. They will understand that you've gone through that, depending on like how long you've been with them. We've seen that several times where it is, I'm so sorry, this was a lapse. It will never happen again. I've been with you forever. Can you please remove it? And then get it in writing and submit it to the bureaus to have it removed. And that's something that I think, people are so scared, like, oh, I screwed up. This is so embarrassing. If that's not you and it didn't happen because, you know, it was a
So
lapse, go and try to be proactive and hopefully then it won't even appear on your credit report.
now I used to always advise my clients to do that. And I used to always tell them, hey, if you ask, the worst they can say is no. And very likely they're going to say yes. And I would say about 50% of the time they used to say yes, they'll remove it.
Yeah.
But not anymore. I haven't had a client successfully remove something from the credit report now in years. And that the response is that it would be, and maybe it's because it was a mortgage late, because
Oh,
they say that they cannot remove it because that would be unfair to the reporting and their investors. And so it's like, so maybe it's just more.
I would say, I would imagine the weight would be where it's, yeah, I'm not surprised by that.
Yeah.
To be fair. It's more so, I was thinking more so of the gas credit card
Yeah.
on that. Yeah.
I've heard that if they do it for you and then they don't do it for somebody else, and somebody comes in and says, well, you did it for that person, they look like this, or they're this
Right. Fair lending.
discrimination there. So that's what I'd heard in the last few years too, and I've heard that for credit cards. I mean, so I'd love to know which companies are actually human and would
List is
Not,
getting
and not
smaller.
AI,
what?
and not just AI.
Yeah. So we have a couple. Peter is very, very vocal today. So he, when we were talking about the payouts on the class action lawsuits, he goes 120 million for the attorney, 56 cents for every plaintiff. He's completely correct.
Yeah.
Jan had pointed out that California is a sue happy state, and I would say that is true. However, I would also like to state that both of the mortgage lawsuits, or that real, whatever the real one that I said, those were filed in Tennessee.
Yeah.
The NAR lawsuit was Missouri. So they're targeting places there. I don't think that they are filing in those places by accident. I think they are doing it on purpose, because they're able to push this stuff through. Bill had said at one time it was more regional with the bureaus. Not all creditors report to all three bureaus. That's totally true. Hence why some scores are slightly different. Is that a correct assessment? I believe that is correct, but I also think the models are slightly different, or the three bureaus are slightly different in how they calculate scores, right?
Yeah, yes, and yes. So it did used to be much more regional. That's pretty much not the case anymore. But because of that, all of their algorithms, how they looked at things was weighted slightly different. But uh, hence, I think kind of again why it needed to be changed because it was built off of a system that's changed.
Oh, so Peter's on fire today. He has this interesting point I hadn't really thought of. As the cost goes up, is it likely a credit report will eventually become portable and can be assigned between lenders like the appraisals were for a while, or that they still are, I guess.
That is interesting. And I guess like potentially in the sense of, I guess, huh.
I know. Good one,
Well,
Peter.
I guess how you would be able to transfer the data if there would be kind of like a reissue between lenders that you'd be able to kind of pick it up, but how old it would have to be, or if you had to use it within a certain time
Yeah.
frame. I think the biggest would be like how do you access it? How do you know who, if you went to ABC Mortgage Company and then you went to XYZ, how does that communicate? And I don't think ABC would want to share anything with XYZ.
Well, Michael said we cannot do that is the response. And then nag, 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 and have them do it to make you go away was another idea. And then Yan commented that we're right, that's where they have sympathetic juries with, Tennessee and Missouri, I guess. I mean, I think it depends on I think there are sympathetic juries everywhere, depending on what your objective might be. But I just find it interesting that those are the states that they're doing this in. And so,
You know,
okay, back to let me ask you this question because this was in my head when you were describing it earlier, which is if the FICO goes directly to you with the black box, cuts out the three bureaus, then that means that the three bureaus are not doing their add-on to the FICO cost.
Correct.
And then potentially the cost will go down for the consumer, although you're going to have to pay to manage the black box and figure all that out. So how much does that cost? And how does this all how does the
Right.
borrower fare in the end of all this?
How does the borrower fare or the lender fare?
The bar
So
I'm interested in the borrower. No one else is, but I am. I mean, not no.
well, for the borrower, the report should look the same to you. The borrower, potentially there is a change in pricing, but again, that's still a big question mark. If we're looking at that closed loan pricing, is it that big of a difference? It really depends. For the borrower, unpopular over here, but at the end of the day, the credit report is a very, very small percentage of your whole closed loan package. And to fund, what is it, $13,000 now to, so,
Crazy.
if you're looking at $150 within that, that's challenging. Now, if we're really honest with that, if we go back to the 25 to 30 out of 100 credit reports that are closing, the lender is feeling that a little bit more than the borrower is. But ultimately, is the borrower paying the price? I think that's when we start looking at where are we shifting the cost of the reports? If, who's paying that cost of the loans that don't go anywhere? You as a lender, no matter what, have to figure out how to close that gap. And ultimately, is that going to rest on the shoulders of the borrower? Yeah, then that might be a conversation where, how much of that package is actually headed to the borrower. But, an appraisal is $800, a credit report is 150, both are necessary. Then there's all the other costs, bundled in. But the hard thing about an appraisal, the difference between an appraisal and a credit report is that you're not pulling an appraisal on every person that walks in the door. You're pulling a credit report. That's why there's a kind of an outcry on the price of credit reports.
Typically,
shouldn't the cost of something as technology be going down? Because it's not manually, there's not a lot of manual intensive parts to the credit report. The appraisal, you have to have a person go out there. The underwriter, you have to have a person underwrite it. Processors under, but the credit report, there's not a lot of human beings involved with the credit report. And so in theory, that cost should be going down.
I think that the argument has been that the data, the accuracy of the data, the improvements to that data and how it is furnished has improved throughout the years.
Interesting.
That we could argue the cost of of the mortgage experience across a lot of
Yeah.
things, and certainly credit is important for to put it mildly. So, and we hear the same exact argument from the appraisal industry. Oh, it's such a small portion of the.
It's hard, but it's all a piece of that pie, right? Yeah.
I mean, you could go through title and escrow fees and be like, what the, and have the same, like everybody thinks their part isn't that big of a deal. It's when you add it all together that it's a lot for the borrower. And especially,
Right.
I had a chance to understand what a recording fee was in New Mexico versus California the other day and almost died. So it's, I think this is a decent, not decent. I think it's an important discussion. I think that overall costs are crazy. When they throw out the cost to manufacture a loan numbers, I have asked a million times for someone to show me these P&Ls. Never one single time has anyone offered to do it. I'm like, where is that data coming from and what does it include? And I actually know that private jets are included in that data for at least a few companies. So I am not feeling terribly, yeah, I don't have, okay, I'm gonna leave it there. So Tracy, thank you. This
That was a lot. Thank you, everybody.
Yeah.
clear a lot because it's all very confusing, and I think it made it so much clearer understanding. Okay, this is going to shift from here to here. Now I got it. Now the question is, how the hell do they put it into effect, and what is the cost going to be?
Yeah. And pricing is coming. And now the question is how quickly can they put this together for it to work? Because again, there's lots of pieces that have to be figured out. I think the announcement was made before those things were kind of mapped out a bit. So we'll see. And you're not wrong for being confused, but as always, anyone can reach out to me for questions. You don't have to be a customer of mine. I love working with people across the board. So, and I promise I won't turn it and be like, thanks for calling now. Do you want to use partners? It really can be a conversation.
For a second, I'm just going to say, if you are not considering partners, you should, because is fantastic. And they've merged with another company that I used before partners. I mean, these are good people who really do work hard. And when you have anything outside of the ordinary and you need help on your credit report, they just jump in and try and help. So you should ask her about that. But knowing that she's not going to harangue you is also nice, right?
Yeah, yeah. Well, thanks for that, Audrey.
All right, good grief. Yeah, I can do that, right? My show, our show.
And yeah, and a vasectomy tech too. It was a great show. There you go.
Okay.
Someone said it was all this, and we learned that you used to help with vasectomies. I'm like, that's my takeaway. That's a pretty awesome.
Still have vasectomies. Yet when my oldest son needed 10 stitches, I had to leave the room. I almost fainted and died.
That's different. That's your baby.
For it. All right, kids, have a great week. There are loans. Kevin and I are busy. We're closing loans. You should be too. If you're not, it's because you're not going and getting it. So go, okay. You're not going and getting loans. Go get loans and close them. All right. Mwah. Have a great week, everyone.